Coming up on Mountain News this morning, a former nurse practitioner in Letcher County pleads guilty to more than 26 related charges involving a teenage boy. And another survivor of last week's mass shooting at a Louisville bank is finally able to return home.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News this morning.
Good morning, I'm Chas Gayhart. It is 6:33 on Tuesday, April 18th. Let's go over and check in again with Brandon.
Well, the forecast has not much changed since you came over here before, but it's starting to get a little bit more daylight, so that's a nice change.
That's what it tells me to do. It says check with Brandon.
Said, check over here. Come on over here. I got you. I got your back. All right, let's take a look, see what's going on out there this morning. Beautiful sunrise underway. Buffalo Mountain here in Perry County this morning, so it's going to be another beautiful day, another breezy day, and some of us under enhanced risk for some fire danger. So again, just kind of keep that in mind. I actually just seen a few minutes ago that they didn't pull the red flag warning, but for the rest of our region there, the counties in our region, elevated risk for wildfires today. So lower humidities, drier out there. You see the breeze right there on top of Buffalo Mountain right now. So again, just be extra careful out there if you're burning, and I would recommend burning until we get some rain, okay? So just hold off on that for a little bit. 38 in London, 34 Manchester, 32 now in Jonesville. Also a frost advisory for most of the region until 9 o'clock this morning. I have my doubts, but it looks like it's going to pan out for us there on those colder temperatures. We're looking at 68 by 3 o'clock this afternoon as the kids get back on the bus, but I think we make it into the 70s by later today, right around 5 o'clock. But again, although it's going to be sunny, it's going to be breezy, so be careful out there. Jess?
Thanks, Brandon. A former nurse practitioner in Letcher County pleaded guilty to sex acts involving a 16-year-old boy. WYMT's RJ Johnson reports.
Through records obtained from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, on Monday morning, Carrie Lee Hall pled guilty to all charges of her having sexual relations with the minor.
But in this case, the defendant this morning with her counsel entered guilty pleas to all charges. Each and every indictment, there were a total of 6 indictments during that, as I said, narrow period in September of 2020.
Hall engaged in sexual acts with the then 16-year-old victim. Commonwealth's attorney Edison Banks II says she was no stranger to the family.
She had children that were of similar age that were friends. They had been family friends for several years at that point. And during that period is when the vast majority of the events occurred.
At the time of the acts, she was watching after the victim and his 2 siblings while their father was in the hospital. Because of this, she was listed as a person of position of trust.
The period that she was watching, had volunteered to let the juvenile and his brother and sister stay with her while the father was in the hospital at Pikeville on a ventilator.
That was RJ Johnson reporting. Banks says Hall will continue to be housed in the Letcher County Jail until sentencing on June 7th and will most likely have to register as a sex offender. And a Southern Kentucky mother is in jail facing charges in connection to her daughter's death. Amora Smallwood died at a Corbin hospital in February. State police described horrific injuries at the hands of the mother's boyfriend, Jordan Taylor. But on Monday, a grand jury indicted Amora's mother, Alexandra Ward, on charges related to her death. Investigators say it's not clear if the abuse happened all at once or during a longer period of time.
That question's still out. Right now, we have several doctors reviewing Amora, reviewing parts of her body. It's not just an autopsy. We've hired experts from different parts of the country to review different parts of her anatomy.
Both suspects will be arraigned at separate hearings next month. A Southern Kentucky police officer remains in the hospital after a motorcycle crash. Monticello police say Officer Jeremy Thompson remains in critical but stable condition at UK Hospital. He was flown to the hospital after suffering serious injuries in a crash Thursday. Officer Thompson was scheduled to undergo another major surgery yesterday. He has served with the Monticello police for several years. A 7th patient is back home 1 week after the deadly mass shooting at the Old National Bank in Louisville. But Officer Nicholas Wilt is still being treated and remains in critical but stable condition. He was shot in the head responding to last Monday's shooting. Louisville police say Wilt's family sees and feels the love of so many in the community. 4 of the 5 victims who were killed in this shooting have been laid to rest. The funeral for 45-year-old Juliana Farmer is Saturday. The city of Louisville is dealing with back-to-back tragedies, 2 deadly mass shootings in less than 1 week. They're just 2 of the more than 100 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year. Yesterday, members of the Kentucky Black Legislative Caucus called for change. They're showing their support for the so-called Tennessee 3 legislators and calling for comprehensive gun control legislation here in Kentucky.
We're going to support those who are standing up for democracy, in other words, full and free expression. We're standing up for that. That's very important. Understand these issues are intertwined because when people are in power, sometimes they lose perspective over what their responsibility is.
Representative George Brown Jr. says he has filed several gun safety bills that have not been called or been in committee the last few sessions, but he hopes to see change in the future. While the legislative session has ended in Kentucky, Governor Andy Beshear could call a special session to address a specific issue. The Gun Violence Archive says there have been 162 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year. Thousands of Americans fed up with feeling unsafe took to the streets in 2 major U.S. cities yesterday, demanding politicians do more. CBS's Skylar Henry is at one of the protests in Washington, D.C.
Assault weapons have to go!
Protesters marched through the National Mall carrying photos of loved ones lost to gun violence and calling on Congress to ban assault weapons.
I'm terrified every single day, every single moment, because it's not if it will happen again, it's when.
Lindsay Hartman was at the 4th of July parade in Highland Park, Illinois last year, when a gunman killed 7 people and wounded 48 others. She says she shielded her 4-year-old from the bullets.
There's no reason for weapons of war to exist in the way that they do with no regulation.
A new CBS News poll finds 62% of Americans want to ban the AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. But the poll also found stark differences along ideological lines. 81% of liberals think the U.S. would be safer if fewer or no people own guns. 40% of conservatives think the U.S. would be safer if more people or everyone had guns. Gun violence remains a top concern for most Americans, according to the CBS News poll, including 77% of parents and 60% of students. But at this weekend's annual NRA convention, several Republican presidential candidates indicated there's no appetite for gun control legislation within the GOP.
The issue is not too many guns. The issue is too many thugs, hoodlums, and savage criminals on our street. We don't need gun control. We need crime control.
A study from the Kaiser Family Foundation found roughly 1 in 5 Americans have had a shooting death in their family. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Washington.
The Gun Violence Archive says there have been more than 12,000 gun violence deaths this year alone. Well, this week is National Work Zone Awareness Week, so officials from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet and Ohio Department of Transportation came together to hold an event in Ashland yesterday. The Awareness Week is an annual campaign to encourage safe driving through work zones, and officials from both states shared statistics of work zone-related injuries. The overall message is to drive safely so everyone can get home.
All year long, you need to keep a vigilant watch when not only our crews are out on the road, but contractors, emergency personnel as well. They're out there trying to do a job, trying to accomplish something to make the roadway safer for you to be there traveling.
KYTC also says slow down and put the phone down, as distracted driving is one contributor to work zone crashes.
.642 here on this Tuesday morning. We're taking a live look at downtown Hazard, Triangle Park, 45, blue skies, beautiful start to the day. A little bit of light traffic out there this morning. Temperatures on the chilly side. A lot of folks in the 30s this morning. Let me name off the 40s for you. Monticello, Williamsburg, Wise, Pikeville's the hot spot at 49, Prestonsburg, Jackson, Hazard, and Logan. That is it. Everybody else is in the 30s this morning. Now, the winds, not too bad just yet. We're going to see those gusts up to 15 to 20 miles per hour later today, and we're going to continue to see that warm air push in. The outdoor forecast A little cold, so make sure that you make sure your cars are not frosted over. Frost advisory till 9, so keep that in mind. Breezy conditions later. Again, elevated fire risk, so no burning until we get some moisture in here, which could be later this week. Chas?
Thanks, Brandon, and thank you for joining us. The time is 6:43. Still to come on Mountain News this morning. Investigators in Texas determined the cause of a large fire at a Texas dairy farm that left thousands of cows dead.